Chapter 1. The Pool of Darkness. The tale starts, as such things often do, with beauty. Deep beneath the keep's crumbling walls, there lay a cavern shaped by artisans' and masons' hands. The rock was striated with crystal veins, and at its heart rested a pool that shone as though the moon had spilled its silver blood into the earth. A pool of radiance, they call such wonders, where the weave seeps into the world raw and untamed, brimming with the magic that births storms, songs, and sorcery alike. A blessing, aye, and a snare. For such places are not guarded by chance. You see, magic, pure magic, is as vulnerable as it is mighty. All it takes is one clever villain or one desperate fool to twist it into something foul. And so it was here, in the mid-14th century of Dale Reckoning, when a certain noble bronze dragon, whose name I shall keep close, for some griefs ought not be spoken lightly, descended into the cavern. Perhaps he sought wisdom in those shimmering waters, perhaps renewal for a heart grown weary. Dragons are far older and more complicated than most will give them credit for. But the pool held a dark secret. Ah, yes, here we come to the shadow beneath the light, Tyrants. Old as ruin, slippery as smoke, and twice as poisonous. Wraiths and ghosts do have a way of complicating such stories. He was a usurper of souls, a creeping parasite collecting bodies down in the dark halls, and the quiet drops of blood fueled his hunger. There he had waited, dreaming in the glow, until the dragon's claws rippled the water. The moment the noble beast bent his neck to drink, the trap was sprung. Tyrants surged into his mind like snowdrops into a hearthfire, smothering the dragon's will beneath his own. And then as he completed his rites, the corruption seeped further in. Dark rituals, older than the names of the gods, began to worm their way through the weave. The pool's silver light dimmed to sullen embers, then to a slick and gleaming black that drank in every spark of light. The warmth that once drew living things like moths to a flame was replaced by a chill hunger. It was reborn as a pool of darkness. Chapter 2. The Pit Fiend and the Red Wizard. Now, if you thought the tale of the pool's corruption ended with Tyrants' smug grin staring out of black waters, then you've clearly never lived long enough to see what mortal ambition can add to a mess already ripe with peril. A decade on, in the year of the Morning Star, 1350 by Dale Reckoning, the Black Lord himself, Bane, curse his grasping name, stirred in his endless hunger for dominion. He drew about him an alliance of dark powers, each more unpleasant than the last. But the helm of this particular cabal was placed upon the brow of a red wizard of Thay named Marcus. Now, I've met many red wizards in my day, and I'll tell you plain, their arrogance could outshine a midday sun, but competence, that's far more uneven. Marcus was no exception. To strengthen his designs, Bane gave Marcus a servant of considerable weight. Quite literally. Tanitol was his name, a pit fiend of such seasoned cruelty and cunning that even the archdevils of the Nine Hells gave him a wide berth when his schemes were in motion. Pit fiends seem by many to be common roaring brutes. Just like my pipe rack, there is more in there than you can imagine. They are the nobility of hell, generals of its iron legions, and their conquests are planned across centuries. They command hosts of lesser devils, corrupt, mortal kings, and plot as deftly as any courtier in Waterdeep. They will rip your soul apart just as readily as they will convince you to hand it over yourself. Tanitol, of course, found himself chained to Marcus's service, an indignity akin to yoking a dragon to plough a field. Vastly more competent than his nominal master, the Pit Fiend was used as both a blunt instrument and convenient scapegoat whenever Marcus's fumbling drew unwanted ire. Still, Tanitol played the game. He brought Marcus power, raised him armies numbering in the thousands, and kept the great project alive. The reawakening of the pools of radiance across the Moonsea. But even the most patient devil has limits. When Marcus's ineptitude threatened to undo years of work, Tanatal shifted tactics. Assuming the guise of Latenat, a charming human bard, he began to work the people of Flan with honeyed words. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. Convince them to abandon the city willingly, thus leaving the stolen bastion ripe for the taking. And, I'll grant it, the plan was working. Latenat's songs sowed fear of the shadows and whispers of doom. The folk were packing their things, ready to flee, until Marcus, in a fit of desperate pride, summoned Tanatal to his side at the worst possible moment. What followed was the kind of reckless sorcery that makes old mages like myself reach for the strongest pipeweed. Marcus, drunk on his own imagined brilliance, tapped the corrupted pool's power to fuel divine magics far beyond his reach. With it, he tore Flan and several other cities from their roots in the realms, casting them into the nether realms like a spoiled child scattering their game pieces. Flan, oh poor Flan, was wrenched into a cavern vast enough to swallow mountains. Other cities fared no better, some cast screaming into the roiling chaos of limbo itself. And who should be trapped within the stolen city when it vanished? The heroes of Flan, a company most unusual. There was Vane, a wizard whose grasp of the art was as sharp as her tongue. Gamaliel, her familiar, a cat, aye, but with a wit that could shame most sages. And Miltiades, a figure out of legend, a death knight bound in eternal penance by the god Tyr himself, cursed to undeath for sins long past, yet still answering the call to defend the innocent. They would not take the theft of Flan lightly. And so the stage was set. A pool born of light turned to shadow, a god of tyranny reaching for it, a red wizard in over his head, and a pit fiend whose patience was wearing thinner than a banker's purse. I remember it well, because what came next was chaos. Even the gods had to pause and watch. Chapter 3. Still Water. Now we come to the part where ambition finally outpaces wisdom, where the hunger for power swells so large it threatens to devour its own master. For under the black stones of Marcus's tower, the pool of darkness throbbed with a strength that could unravel kingdoms. Fed enough souls, innocent or guilty, it mattered little. It might well elevate the one who commanded it into a demigod. And so, as ever, the dark powers circled like wolves around a fattened calf. Flan groaned under their weight. Tanatal's legions, fiends clawed from the 9 hells, stalked its streets. Servants of Moanda, the god of rot, crawled up from the shadows, stinking of decay and ruin. Other beasts, born of nightmares and tyrannical spite, took their places in the siege. The city was being choked, not merely by steel and claw, but by the very fear in its people's hearts. It was then that Tyr himself, stern judge of all souls, summoned Miltiades to fulfill his divine will. Now most folk, upon meeting a death knight, would reach for steel or prayer, and with good reason. Bound by divine punishment for sins of long ago, he yet served Tyr with the obedience of a penitent soldier. His flesh was cold, his eyes like coals banked low, but his will burned hotter than any mortal's. When Tyr's call reached him, Miltiades marched without hesitation into the chaos. Yet no sooner had he set foot in Flan's outskirts than the earth itself began to vomit forth the dead. Graves splitting open under the foul breath of Bane's sorcery. Skeletal ranks rattled into place, and shambling corpses lurched toward him in an endless tide. There, amid the snapping of rusted armor and the hiss of necrotic winds, fate chose to intervene. The heroes of Flan, Renner the Blade, quick with sword and quicker with a grin. Yvain, whose mastery of magic was rivaled only by her stubbornness. Gamaliel, her ever-watchful familiar, tail lashing with feline disdain. And the druid cousins, Andrelson and Talenthea, sworn to the balance of leaf and claw, stumbled upon the embattled knight. And in the thick of that grim melee, Miltiades beheld a face he had thought lost to dust and memory. Zal, the battle mage he had slain in another age, now stood before him as a ghost, armoured in malice, commanding the undead horde like a morbid orchestra. Old wounds burned anew. The clash was brutal. Steel rang on bone. Spells cracked the air. And holy light fought to pierce the reek of the grave. Side by side, the knight and the heroes struck down the dead and shattered Zal's ranks. Yet victory came with a price. The holy shield of Tyr, relic and comfort to Miltiades for centuries, was torn and ruined. Even so, they forced Zal back, whittling away his spectral form until Yvain, eyes alight with the clarity of revelation, spoke the pit fiend's true name, who was watching and commanding over the battlefield. In the battlements above he heard, his form wincing with disdain. For names have power, my friend, and this one was a blade sharper than any steel. With it, Zal's wail split, and the pit fiend vanished, the air, and in a flash of burning light, he was hurled screaming into the 9 hells. His army fell still, and the streets of Flan breathed again. With the battle won, Miltiades stood among new comrades, no longer alone in his burden. Together, they tore down Marcus's schemes, scattered Tanetel's ambitions, and wrestled the city from the jaws of damnation. Flan was returned to its rightful place along the northern shores of the Moonsea, battered but unbroken, and the pool. After the chaos of the Time of Troubles in 1358 by Dale Reckoning, its surface lost all trace of shadow or light. It became ordinary, a basin of fresh, still water, innocent as any mountain spring. But the folk of Flan, who had seen the abyss in its depths, knew better than to trust appearances. They set guards in the chamber, and at Kuto's well above it, that none might slip down to its edge unmarked. For magic, when awakened, has a way of remembering the shape it once wore. Chapter 4. The Birthing Pits. Now I'd be remiss to end the tale with the hero's victory alone, for not all the reckonings took place in the mortal realm. Some debts are paid in coin minted in the 9 hells. When Marcus's schemes collapsed and his forces scattered, the pit fiend Tanetal found himself ensnared, frustrated and furious, caught by chains of divine and infernal make. Even the mightiest of hell's generals can be dragged home in disgrace, and Tanetal's homecoming was less than warm. Down, down he was hauled, past the ashen gates of Malbolge, the 6th layer of hell, into its diseased heart, the birthing pits. If you've not had the misfortune to see them, count yourself blessed. Picture mounds of pulsing, rotten earth, split open like sores. In the hollows between them, churn fetid pools, their waters thick with writhing maggots and snapping, toothless mouths that hunger for the damned. Here, the pain devils drive new arrivals forward, their barbed whips hissing through the sulphurous air. A soul that stumbles too slowly is shoved headlong into the slime, where the stuff of their spirit rots away and reforms into a lemure, shapeless, mindless, and hopeless, before slithering down the mound into an eternity of servitude. Most pits are hidden beneath the poisoned forests of Malbolge, but the central one, that is a spectacle the Archduchess keeps in plain view. And there, standing at the lip of that central pit, was Glasya, Archduchess of Malbolge, daughter of Asmodeus, dangerous as hellfire and twice as beautiful as any mortal lass, with a smile that could cut as deep as any betrayal. And as you can guess, she had been expecting Tanetel. My, she said, her tones sweet as honey. Bane's little errand boy returns. She drifted towards him, her wings folding just so, her eyes bright with mockery. You brought ruin, but not the sort you were sent for. That's the trouble with pit fiends. You think you're more than you are, when you're just soldiers. Elevated servants. Tanatel's great clawed hands curled into fists. Even here, even stripped of his mortal conquests, the fire of his arrogance burned. I served as commanded. Oh, you served, she interrupted, drawing out the word like a serpent's hiss. But service without success is such a shameful thing. And here in Malbolge, as you know, shame is repaid in kind. With a motion as lazy as a lover brushing hair from their eyes, she gestured to the pits. Pain devils seized Tanatel, forcing him to his knees at the brink. The stench rose like a physical blow, thick with the promise of demotion. Do you know what happens to pit fiends who waste their master's time? Glasya's smile widened, all charm and no mercy. They start over, from the bottom. Her fingers flicked. The pain devils shoved. Tanatel fell forward into the churning filth, his roar shattering into a guttural, gurgling scream as the muck swallowed him whole. For long moments the pit boiled, bubbles breaking with the sound of tearing flesh and cracking bone, not physical, but of the soul itself. Then silence, and at last, from the lip of the mound, a pale, formless lemur oozed forth, eyes empty, mouth gaping in a soundless moan. The excruciarch attendants prodded it away, driving it down the slope to wander Malbolge's wastes until some devil saw fit to mould it anew. Glasya watched it go, her head tilted in mock pity. Do work hard this time, Tanatel, she chuckled. Perhaps in a few centuries, you'll claw your way back to where you were. And with that, she turned away, her laughter carrying over the stench and the screams of the birthing pits.